Good Lord. Forgive the sunburn, I know. You should have seen me after I cycled across the Taklamakan desert. I looked like Neapolitan ice cream. Doop, 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 doop. Booze news. All the news about booze when there's booze about news. No. A French brewer has been ordered by Beatles fan favourite Yoko Ono to stop selling a craft beer labelled John Lemon. Get it? Get it? John Lennon? John Lemon? It's pretty highbrow stuff. The Japanese-American artist and widow of the Beatles star John Lennon claimed it was a breach of a trademark she had registered a decade ago to stop her late husband being mocked, his name misused and his reputation sullied. Monsieur Picard, owner of the brewery, said on receipt of a letter from Ono's lawyers, "The lawyer's letter warned if I didn't stop selling the beer, I would be ordered to pay 100,000 euros immediately and another 1,500 euros every day until I stopped. That was really scary." Slight digression here. 100,000 euros immediately plus 1,500 every day until they stopped was the same thing that I was threatened with when I accidentally got Ann Summers sued by Marks and Spencer. In the end, I got us out of that legal situation by writing an open letter in the UK press to the CEO of Marks and Spencer, inviting him, the CEO, to spank our CEO, Jacqueline Gold. I've lived a very weird life. Anyway, back to the news story. I hate all of this shit. I hate everything about it, and I hate Yoko Ono. Fun fact about Yoko Ono, hers is the only music that when you play it backwards, there is no demonic message, but it is actually better. I hate that she's so litigious, but more than that, I hate craft beer. I hate the craft beer industry. I hate people who like craft beer. But most of all, I hate this trashy, lowest common denominator marketing. Marketing in the alcohol industry, as much as I resent alcohol marketing, it should at least be fun, right? It should be good. And this stuff is just not. It's crap. They just pick a famous person, do a pun on their name, slap the label on a bottle, and then profit. And it's so easy to do. It's so lowest common denominator. Look, I'll do a couple now off the top of my head. Anthony Hopkins, Clint Eastwood, Juice Springsteen, the Notorious IPA. Actually, I bet that one's real. Let me check. It is real. It does exist. The Notorious IPA. There's like 4 called Clint Eastwood. Right, fun's over. That was booze news. It's time for me to have opinions on the internet, I guess. I don't even want to do booze news, but loads of you tell me that you like it. So basically what I'm saying is that it's your fault this channel has gone to shit. Brothers, sisters, comrades and friends, welcome to Bad Country. Okay, buckle up, let's get comfortable. Relapse is a choice. Every time you drink after you know that drinking is a problem for you, that is on you. There are no exceptions and no excuses. Now, because I just said there are no exceptions, and I know how your grubby little mind works, I imagine that you're currently racking your brain trying to think of some exceptions. So let's test this opinion. Leave it in the comments if you can think of a realistic exception to this opinion. Realistic. And while you're doing that, I'm going to try as hard as I can to explain this opinion. The opinion again. So if you've had some sobriety, and then you've taken another drink, even with the knowledge of all the damage it will invariably do, then you chose that. There was a moment when a decision was made to drink. There was a decision between a yes and a no, and you chose yes. So that's my starting point, and I'll level with you. I hate clickbaity bullshit as much as anybody else. I hate it as much as you do. And I try really hard not to do it, although the temptation on a channel like this is sometimes quite strong, to just do big provocative opinions. And I try not to do that, except when those opinions coincide with something which I sincerely believe. And in this case, this is not clickbaity bullshit. I genuinely believe this. And I say it from a place of experience because I had 100 relapses, after which I thrashed around looking for something or someone to blame. And I can honestly say that looking back on that period now, with a little bit of sobriety under my belt, every single one of those relapses ultimately pointed back to a decision I had made. Sometimes that decision was made days or weeks before the relapse began, and sometimes it was only in the instance before I put the drink to my stupid mouth. Whatever the case, there was always a decision, and that decision was always within my control. There's some of you who are going to find an opinion like that personally insulting, and there are some of you who will find it empowering. It depends a little bit on your own psychology and where you are on your sobriety journey. I suspect the earlier you are, like if you're still in relapses right now, you're more likely to find this opinion personally insulting, personally offensive. Whereas the more sobriety that you have, and the more that you've learned that your sobriety is your responsibility, the more likely you are to find an opinion like this empowering. Not relapsing is also a choice. And that's why people who've realized that much might find this a positive message instead of the negative one, which it might look like at first glance. And those of you who are insulted, I really want to address you more than the people with more sobriety time. I'd like you to reflect on your reaction. If you do feel insulted or offended, I'd like you to reflect on that reaction. Because often an opinion like this one offends people, particularly when they believe that they are powerless over alcohol. Right? Or that some external force is acting on them, or that their alcoholism is beyond their control. Those are the people who tend to be defensive when they're presented with an argument such as relapse is a choice. It tends to be people who are convinced that they have no agency and that alcohol is making the decisions for them. And I want to argue that that is never the case. Now, if that's you, you might try to argue that your circumstances are exceptional, right? They're unusual. And we all feel like that. All alcoholics think their circumstances are exceptional. And maybe, for example, you're experiencing grief. And therefore, it's kind of taboo for me to criticize your descent into alcohol because of the overwhelming feeling of grief that you're experiencing. Or perhaps you have major depressive disorder that is, in your mind, causing you to drink. Well, in both cases, first of all, you have my sympathy. I have experienced grief and certainly experienced chronic depression. So I do know what it's like. But because I've been there, you have my sympathy, but you also have my skepticism. Because plenty of people survive grief sober. And even more people, millions, navigate very severe depression healthily in sobriety. But because you're an alcoholic, not to make assumptions, but you're watching this, but because you're an alcoholic, you think that your alcoholism is exceptional and that your grief is worse than everybody else's grief and your depression is more virulent than everybody else's depression. Because that's how we think in alcoholism. Our situation is worse than everybody else's. Nobody understands us. Well, to be blunt, that still doesn't negate the point and the opinion that a relapse is a choice. It's just a choice that is heavily influenced by how you are feeling in that moment, but it is nonetheless a choice. Okay, with all that said, I have a pretty strict rule here at Bad Country on the channel to not openly or publicly criticize Alcoholics Anonymous. I came to the conclusion, even though I know quite a lot of people enjoy that kind of thing, and I have been asked in the past, I don't think it does anybody any good. And I've stuck to that rule pretty consistently for the 2.5 years or so that I've been doing this. But I will let one slip today. And it's this. For all the good that I think AA does in the world, and for all of the millions of people that it undoubtedly helps stay sober, it's all undermined by the very first sentence in the program. I have admitted that I am powerless over alcohol. It's literally the first words of step 1. I have admitted that I am powerless over alcohol. And that single sentence, it does so much, in my opinion, to sabotage any potential good that the rest of the system can do. That's why I left. That sentence, that belief, that dogma, that doctrine, that is what forced me out. I can tolerate the politics and the clickiness and the weird people, and I even found a way to interpret the higher power thing. I found a way around that, and I was able to set my own sensibilities aside when I realized that the 12 steps mention God more than the 10 commandments do. That is true. I was able to put all of that to one side in order to let in the system and to work with it. But I could, in the end, after attending regularly for 2 years or so, I was never able to reconcile or interpret the idea of powerlessness in any kind of positive or affirmative way for my sobriety. That is why I left. Because all of the other steps, everything else that you learn in AA, everything else that's part of that program is built on that foundation. And because I fundamentally disagree on the issue of powerlessness, I was not ever able to buy into the rest of what that kind of rickety AA structure had to offer. In the end, that's what forced me out. I don't believe that we are powerless over alcohol. Quite the opposite. In fact, walking into AA is a demonstration that you have some power over alcohol. Any moment of any given day when you are not drinking, you are demonstrating power over alcohol. Any urge that you overcome, any desire to drink that you defeat, you are exerting your own personal power and agency over alcohol. For me, it is demonstrably true that we do have power over this condition. Every time you say no, that's power. Unfortunately, the dark side of that is that while every time we say no to a drink, that is a choice, every time we say yes, that is also a choice. Anytime we choose not to drink, we exert power. But every time we choose to drink, we choose to get back on that carousel for another go around. That is a decision. Because as I said, I'm not attacking you. I'm not attacking somebody for choosing to relapse. That's not my issue. I'd be a complete hypocrite if I did that, having done it myself dozens and dozens of times. But what I can tell you is this. 1,000 days of sobriety is now within reach for me. I'm getting close to 1,000 days of continuous sobriety. And I can assure you that once you understand that relapse is a choice, then you start to realize that it is within your power to choose not to. And once you realize that it is within your power, sobriety begins to get easier. Now, it's not in my It's not my intention to be unnecessarily confrontational or to be particularly pointed when I say that relapse is a choice, because that phrasing makes it seem like a criticism. And in a sense, I guess, I can't deny that it is a little bit. It certainly feels like a criticism. But it's not really. It's a way of trying to make you understand that because it is a choice, it is a powerful thing. And if you can choose to drink, you can also choose not to. Now, there is a danger for sharing this kind of opinion publicly on YouTube, where I don't have full control of the audience. I don't know anything about you. I don't know who is in the audience. But I do know a bit about how the alcoholic mind works. And I can kind of predict an alcoholic's response to this kind of opinion. And it's dangerous. It's dangerous for me to share it, which is why I've been hesitant to put out a video like this. But it also is dangerous to you, all right? Here's why. Here's how the alcoholic mind works. It's because when somebody who is in a pattern of relapsing right now hears a sentence like, relapse is a choice, the way that their alcoholic brain, the way that your alcoholic brain might interpret that is something like, well, if relapse is a choice, then I must be weak. Therefore, I will never be sober. Therefore, I may as well continue drinking. Right? That's the insidious way in which an alcoholic brain forms logic. But that right there, that response that, well, I must be weak because relapse is a choice, so I may as well keep drinking. That is the condition of alcoholism directly influencing your thoughts. That is alcoholic thinking. That is drinking thinking encapsulated. Subverting every single one of your thoughts. Finding any way it can to convince you to drink again. Subverting every piece of advice and every emotion, good or bad, to get you to pick up the bottle once more. Okay, I think I've beaten the point to death by now. So let me summarize very briefly. I believe that alcoholism is involuntary. Very few of us choose to become alcoholics. But relapse is a choice. Addiction doesn't relieve you of your responsibility, and it doesn't eliminate intentional behavior. If you go to the liquor store, that is intentional behavior, even if it is influenced by your alcohol addiction. That's still on you. So we might not choose to live like this, and our descent into alcoholism might be caused by factors beyond our control. And God knows I'm sympathetic to that, because I'm subject to them as well. But the moment you start to suspect that you have an unhealthy relationship with alcohol, and then you drink anyway, that is a choice. You chose that. That was a decision. And therefore, the responsibility for the consequences are on you too. But look, don't let that get you down. I know it feels like an attack. I know it sounds like criticism, but it isn't. What I'm really trying to say is that you do have some power. You're not necessarily a passenger in this thing. You can reach over and grab the wheel. Taking responsibility for your drinking, telling people that you have a problem, can be really liberating, almost ecstatic. It can feel like a massive weight lifting if you share the fact that you have a problem. And it feels so good to take responsibility of that. It feels so good to be proud of yourself for choosing not to drink. It's exponential, because once you've said no once, even if you might not say no every time in the future, that's okay. You might not say no every time afterwards, but once you've said it once, it gets easier and easier to say it in the future. And before too long, you wake up one day and you realize that you don't have to actively be choosing between yes and no anymore. because sobriety has become your new normal. That's it for today. Check out the Patreon at patreon.com/badcountrysober and go and investigate Better Without Booze. That's a sobriety app that I'm involved with, betterwithoutbooze.me. It's a kind of self-guided route to sobriety. Thank you very much for watching, and good luck out there.